Kookum's Red Shoes, written by Peter Ivinson and illustrated by Sheldon Dawson. Kookum was proud of the school across the road from her place. Every day she would bake up a big batch of bannock to share with all the kids on the playground. Always she would keep her eyes open. Yet every time she went to school, she remembered her red shoes and the tornado of a truck that sucked her off the reserve one day and transported her to a world that was further away from home than the wonderful world of Oz. Before the red shoes, she had been like any child, sometimes sad, but mostly happy and content. She remembered the cheerful chuckles from her mother and the strong arms of her father as he swung her round the kitchen. She remembered the happy gurgles and the squeals of delight as her baby brother crawled across the dirt floor of the log cabin. And she remembered that happy cold Saturday morning when Dad hitched up the team of horses and Mother bundled them up in coats and sweaters for a ride into town to see the Saturday matinee, a wonderful story of a little girl named Dorothy who was snatched from her home in Kansas by a tornado and thrown into a dreamland filled with strange creatures, some good, some evil. She remembered how the town looked under thick gray clouds as the horses plodded down towards the movie theater. Tumbling snow, icy streets, and whitewashed doors blended together. The whole town seemed white, except for one pair of shoes that glistened and beckoned from the only plate glass window on Main Street. Before the movie, she wanted those red shoes. After, she was even more determined that she should have them. With shoes like Dorothy's on her feet, she could trip down her own yellow brick road to a wonderful world out there somewhere past the town and a place even further than the reserve. But little one, Mother cautioned, those shoes are too big, too expensive, added Father. But I want them, she exclaimed. For the rest of the winter and all that spring, she pestered her parents about those shoes until one day a shoebox appeared on the kitchen table. She ripped off the lid, and there lay her very own pair of red shoes. Immediately she tried them on. They fit perfectly. She didn't turn into Dorothy, but she did have her very own shoes. You'll have to save them for good, warned her mother. You must not wear them outside and to play, added her father. She didn't. Every morning she opened the box and felt the soft red leather, and every evening before she went to bed, she would put them on and walk carefully around the kitchen table. She got to wear them outside twice that summer, once to visit aunties and once to Johnny Jack's wake. The rest of the summer she spent barefoot in the sand by the side of the road, making a yellow brick road of her own. Twigs became forests, stones became homes, a tin cup became a man, a bit of yarn turned into a lion, a clump of woven grass became a scarecrow, and choke cherries became little munchkins. She could see it long before she heard it. It caused such a cloud of dust as it knifed its way through the reserve, pounding the earth and rattling towards her, crashing and squealing its way into her quiet world. Her tornado had arrived. It rushed up and slammed to a halt just past the wonder world she had created. She saw the children first. The back of the truck was filled with sad, brown, frightened eyes and tear-stained dust-covered faces. A man jumped out, grabbed her around the middle, and dragged her over to the truck. "Where are you taking me?" she screamed. "To school," the man shouted. "To school." "But my red shoes," she screamed, thinking of her bare feet. "I need to wear my red shoes." "No time," the man shouted. "No time." The driver fired up the truck as it rattled and crashed its way down the road. She stared blankly at her yellow brick road as it faded swiftly from view. She wished she had been more alert. She wished she'd spent the time memorizing every twist and turn in the bumpy road. But the journey went on and on and on. She was certain she would never see her red shoes again. Finally, after many miles, the truck slammed to a halt in front of a tall, 3-story building with rows of narrow little windows. On the steps perched 3 black-robed women. They swooped down upon the children, quickly grabbed one child under each arm, and marched through the doors of the school. Close to 60 years had passed, but Kookum could still hear that door slam shut for the very first time. They were herded into a room, stripped of their clothing, and tossed into tubs of cold water. The woman in black scrubbed them hard with harsh soap and prickly washcloths. They were tossed into white nighties, pushed into line, and prodded to march single file down to the kitchen. White bowls of stew and white bread lined the table, while more black robes brushed past. Suddenly, they all stood still, bowed their heads, and prayed. Then, as if they were like little wind-up dolls, they were told to pick up their spoons and eat. The big black birds made them march their bowls over to the wash basin. Mechanically, the dishes were washed, handed down, dried, handed up, and stored in the cupboard. Mechanically, they were lined up and marched upstairs to a room lined with narrow little beds, all crisp and tidy. Each mechanical day was the same. Get up, go to the chapel, eat, clean, go to school, come from school, eat, clean, sleep. Each day marched into night, which marched into a new day just the same as the day before. Like dutiful little tin soldiers, they learned the don'ts. Don't slouch, stand up straight. Don't speak that language, speak mine. Don't talk to other children, speak only to me. Don't speak to God, don't speak to your God, speak to mine. Kookum tried so hard to be the very best tin soldier. Only by being good did she figure that the black robes would let her leave this place. She had to get home. She had to see her mother and father. She wanted so much to cuddle her baby brother. If she'd only get to put on her bright red shoes, everything would be fine again. The days ticked by one. Saint this, Saint that, Christmas Day, Groundhog Day, Easter, Victoria Day, until one day in June, the ladies in the black announced, for no particular reason, tomorrow you go home. Tomorrow came so slowly. The black robes lined them up one more time and marched them out to the truck. They sat down rigid in their school clothes. Two straight lines faced each other, back straight, staring straight ahead as the truck rumbled and slowly edged away from the school. No tears came. Instead, as the schools passed from view, a little glimmer of a smile began to emerge on each face until she whispered in Cree, "Goodbye, you silly old crows." The whole truck broke out in a belum of laughter. Kookum remembered that she was the first one to take off those heavy black boots and toss them out of the truck. "When I get home, I'm going to wear my new red shoes," she exclaimed. "When I get home, I'm going to eat nothing but bannock," little Susie shouted. They tickled each other and laughed and spoke excitedly in their own tongue. They expected that coming home would be an especially happy event. It wasn't. Kookum remembered the sadness that came over her the moment the truck slammed to a stop in front of her cabin. The cabin looked so small and timid. The roof drooped as if it held up a very heavy burden. The door gaped open and her mother stood there motionless. Her once twinkling brown eyes were dull and lifeless. Her father lay sick in bed from a broken heart, and her baby brother could be found nowhere. He had been caught up in a tornado of his own. She stepped timidly into the cabin. If she could only put on her red shoes, then everything would be right again. She rushed to the corner cupboard and pulled out the box. She threw off the lid and pulled out the shoes. She quickly tried on one, but it didn't fit. She pushed and shoved and squeezed, but nothing would help. "My shoes, my precious little red shoes don't fit anymore," she said to herself, and she looked around her sad little cabin. "My shoes don't fit," she thought as she looked at her mother and father, "and neither do I." It took Kookum a long time to grow into fitting back on the reserve. She tried the city for a while and found she didn't fit there either. It took her time to learn the old ways. She even had to learn to make bannock. Now she could take a new batch of bannock over to the school every day if she wanted, but it was more important just to be Kookum. Every day she knew she would meet a new lion that lacked courage, a tin man who didn't think he had a heart, or a scarecrow who was certain he didn't have a brain. She would have none of that. By giving them Kookum hugs and telling them how proud she was of them, she would make certain these children always felt that they belonged. The end.